Now that the election season has come to a close, could we finally see some momentum in the real estate market? With the political dust settling, buyers and sellers alike have a renewed sense of stability and confidence, which means that we're going to see an improvement in the real estate market, right? So will interest rates come down, and will it be more affordable time to buy a house? Not exactly.
I am determined to find a nice, clean, affordable place to live, even if it kills me.
Hi, I'm Sarah Maslowski with KeyPoint Homes Group, a local real estate agent right here in the Northeast Metro Atlanta area, helping people from all over the country relocate right here to Georgia. So many people were expecting a dramatic improvement in the real estate market after the election. So is that going to happen? And what does the market here currently look like? Well, for starters, there has been a very big slowdown in the real estate market here locally over the last several months. I know a lot of this has to do with interest rates, of course, but also the anticipation over the election. There have been good homes that have sat on the market for 3 or so months until the right buyer has come along. This is a lot more normal of a market compared to the extreme speed at which everything has moved over the past few years. Buyers are being much more intentional about their purchases, and they're being a lot more reserved with their buying power. But it does feel like a major slowdown from the market we've been dealing with for the past few years. Sellers have had to become a lot more realistic with their pricing, but some homes have been very appropriately priced and have still sat for the while. During the last few years, if a home sat on the market for over a month, there was typically a big issue with it. Now it is much more common and expected for a home to sit longer. But I'm still hearing from buyers, why has this home been on the market for so long? There must be something wrong with it. That's not really the case anymore, so you should not be scared away by a home that has been on the market for a bit. There are, of course, homes that will sit because there are things wrong with it, but it's not a blanket answer anymore by any means. For example, if we take a look at Gainesville, the average days on market at the time of filming this video is 32 days. That's up 88% compared to last year. If you were looking in Gainesville this time last year, the average days on market was only 15 days. And we're not just seeing that in Gainesville, pretty much for the most part, it's across the board. The current average days on market for Cumming is 19, up 72% compared to last year. And the average days on market in Swanee is 11 days. That's up 22% compared to last year. Now, when a home goes past that average days on market, that is when you have more negotiating room. You have a lot more negotiating power than you have had in years past. But this negotiating power, it may not be around for very long. As so many people have sat on the sidelines over the last year because of the election and interest rates, now that the election has happened, that not knowing is gone and more buyers are returning to the market. I know to some people it seems like an election would not have much of an impact on whether or not someone thought it would be a good time to move, but over the past 2 election cycles, I have found out just how much of an impact it has had on so many people, whether or not they want to buy or sell. Buyers and sellers now face less uncertainty. In fact, if you take a look historically over the past 8 presidential elections, the real estate market has gone up in the years following. It is safe to say that we can expect that to happen again in 2025.
I didn't expect it to be so complicated.
So now that we are on the other side of another election, we have jumped over that hurdle and more people are feeling more comfortable getting ready to buy or sell. I've seen this talking to many great clients just like you watching this video who have reached out in the past couple of weeks saying, hey, we're planning on making a move. Let's strategize and talk about this. So this is great. It also means that there's going to be more supply from sellers and even more buyers, but that could end up putting upward pressure on prices. Now, speaking of more buyers, now that the election has passed, some people are predicting that we might see a huge influx of buyers. And I don't think that that's necessarily the case. Returning more to normal market trends based on the time of the year, things are always a little bit slower in winter months and things pick up in the spring. And like we just talked about, buyer activity for the entire Metro Atlanta area is down pretty much considerably over the past couple of years. And that is a great thing, not only for the market, but it's great for buyers. Almost all of my clients over the last 6 months or so, we've been able to go under contract on homes, negotiating significantly less than the list price, negotiating things like closing costs, getting money to cover big repairs, all those types of things that 2-3 years ago were unheard of and were so hard to negotiate. Now, let's talk about interest rates. For pretty much all of last year, we heard talk from experts that interest rates were going to start coming down. And while we did see some relief this year, we saw interest rates fall into the low sixes in the beginning of September, and this created a ton of excitement for buyers. However, we're now back into the low sevens. So why is that? Well, typically if there are indications from the Fed that they are going to drop interest rates, the Fed interest rate, which does kind of directly correlate or indirectly correlate with mortgage rates, the mortgage rates will drop in anticipation of this. But even with the Fed announcing that they were dropping rates in October, surprisingly, mortgage rates went up the day after the election. So why is this? Well, it's in reaction to Trump's proposed policies and tariffs because it is thought that these will actually increase inflation, which is why mortgage rates will rise. The explanation here is that overall, these policies that have been proposed will require a lot of deficit spending, which leads to higher interest rates and higher mortgage rates. Now, mortgage rates don't work the same way as other interest rates do. They're more connected to demand for government bonds. When more people want these bonds, mortgage rates usually drop. But because of the strong economic growth in the pandemic era, demand for these bonds has weakened. So the concerns about the growing budget deficit and the potential need for the US government to issue even more debt due to these proposed policies and tariffs has weakened the desire for investors, also known as the companies who buy government bonds to then sell as mortgages, that has lowered. Trump's proposed tariffs would also hike the price of building goods that are imported, which means these materials will cost builders more, which in turn means they will have to charge more for these homes. However, Trump's policies should eventually lead to a higher GDP or gross domestic product, which will spur more growth and development in the economy, which long term will lead to a more balanced budget, which will reduce the deficit, lower mortgage rates, and lead to more people buying houses. Clear as mud, right?
Yeah, clear as mud.
It is definitely complicated, but it is anticipated that interest rates will come down and things should stabilize. I know it all sounds tumultuous and hard to follow. Trust me, I understand. One thing that I think we can say with certainty is that overall, interest rates are historically low, and rates being in the sixes and low sevens is the new normal. I'm finding that buyers and sellers are coming to terms that this new normal is here to stay for a while. After all, it would take a failing economy to put downward pressure on the interest rates. And if anything, the sentiment overall is positive for the economic growth with this new administration. That means that there won't be drastic changes in interest rates. We should still see small incremental decreases in interest rates going forward, but don't expect huge downward swings in interest rates. It's looking like slow and steady is going to win the interest race. However, one major thing to note is that we have seen rates all over the place over the last year and a half, but ultimately things have not changed too drastically here on the local level for our market. And what I mean by that is that we have not seen prices slashed or suddenly move in reverse. That means that if you thought about buying a house 2 years ago, when there was a lot higher demand across the metro, but said, I think the market is going to come down, we're just going to wait for things to get more affordable. That has not happened. And in fact, it's going to cost you significantly more today to buy a house than it was back when interest rates were lower. I know we talked earlier about how buyers have been able to secure homes for less than list price, get money in closing costs, and have repairs done that they likely would not have been able to get back in 2021 and 2022. And that is all very true. However, if you look back at the average sales price of a home in October of 2021 in the greater Atlanta area, it was $435,000. Now the average sales price in October of 2024 is $515,000. In highly desirable areas, this increase is even more dramatic. Take a look at Alpharetta. The average sales price was $583,000 in October of 2021. Look at it today, and the average sales price is now $780,000. Yes, you may have had to pay over asking price and not have any money go towards closing costs back in 2021, but prices have gone up on average almost $400,000 more in the area and in highly desirable areas like Alpharetta, you will likely have an even harder time with current market conditions getting a lower sales price unless the current seller is just aiming for the moon with their list price and finally realizes that this is not realistic. This is something that we are experiencing here in this market, is sellers overpricing their homes, and the price decreases that you see happening on Zillow day in and day out are these sellers just getting more back in line with where they should have been to begin with. Now, if you've been in a rental for 2 years waiting for the market to get better, this is adding even more insult to injury because you've been paying someone else's mortgage for the past 2 years. So you've spent thousands and thousands of dollars that you will not see a return on, all the while home prices have continued to go up and you've helped pay down someone else's mortgage. This isn't to say that you should rush out and buy a house if you aren't ready, but if you are one of those people sitting on the sidelines waiting for things to get better or for prices to suddenly start falling, that is not going to happen, and you're going to continue to spend money on a rental or be stuck in a home and eventually get priced out of an area that you really want to be in. Now, I know if you are a longtime viewer here of the channel, you've heard me tell the story before, but I had clients that were looking back at houses in 2020 and 2021 and they just couldn't handle the competition and didn't want to get into a bidding war, but they went ahead and sold their current home to prepare to buy the next one. They wanted a ranch on a finished basement, and we would look at their options, which currently finding a ranch on a finished basement, that was known, it is a unicorn in real estate because everyone loves the idea of one level living with an additional fully finished space downstairs. So this type of home is very popular and it's more on the harder side to come by. We would go look at houses and they would say over and over, it just feels so expensive. I think we're gonna wait. At that time, they were looking at the $350,000 price point. Now, if you watched any of my videos recently talking about the price point here in the Northeast Metro Atlanta area, $350,000 is basically the minimum threshold essentially for a home here. Now, if you're looking for a ranch on a finished basement built within the last 20 years, you're going to be much closer to the mid $500,000 and easily well over that. I think about this often, how these folks have been grossly priced out of both the home style that they want and the area that they want because they said that they were just going to wait for prices to fall. If you think about the history of housing, aside from 2008, when circumstances were very different and banks were handing out loans left and right that they shouldn't have, can you think of a time when anything has ever gotten more affordable instead of more expensive, especially assets? Yeah, me neither. I think back to 2019 when you could buy a townhouse for the high 100,000s and those same homes today sell for well over 300,000. Or I think about some clients who bought a new construction home on Lake Lanier back in 2021 for $550,000. And now in that exact same neighborhood, homes sell for well over 900,000. Or the folks who were lucky enough to buy homes in Alpharetta back in the early 2000s for a few $100,000. They now sell those well over 900,000. Obviously, not everyone is in a position to buy a house right this minute, or time-wise, now is not ideal. Completely understand that, but this sentiment is more so for those folks that I talk to weekly that say, we want to make a move, but we think we're just going to wait until, sometime next year. And I ask, what is important about that timeline? And sometimes I'll hear the answer, well, it might take us a while to sell our current house, getting it ready to sell. Then we need to decide on an area, find the perfect house, and then make our way to Georgia. And sometimes they'll give me their budget, and then I want to yell from the rooftops that time is of the essence. Time is money in real estate. That $375,000 house that may be available today, this time next year, that same $375,000 house may now be $400,000. You may think that a drop in interest rates will save you money, which theoretically it can and it will, but if the price of the house is now $25,000, $50,000 more dollars than what it was during the slower winter months, that counteracts that when you could have bought a home for a lower list price and refinance when rates hopefully make their way down later. Long story short, now is a great time to buy a house. Despite higher interest rates, despite the fact that you would have to move in the winter, now is the best time for a quote deal. There will not be a more affordable time to buy. So I'm curious, what do you think? Are you ready to make a move? And if Georgia is on your mind, I want to be your real estate agent. You can reach me by clicking the link in my pinned comment below this video. And if you are interested in learning more about what it's like living in Georgia, make sure you check out these videos next.